Hello and welcome everyone to the Daily Coup Connect. My name is Patrick. And
Hey
today,
everyone, and I'm Jonathan Stahl. All right, folks, I've got some limited internet bandwidth here, so I'm going to cut my video. I apologize for that. But again, my name is Jonathan, and I work for University Recreation. I'm their assistant director for adventure programs. A little bit about why I'm here to talk about sustainability. I'll just say a lot of my passion for sustainability can be traced to my love for getting myself and others outside. I've seen personally firsthand a lot of the benefits that people have when they get outside, and then I feel it's really important to care for those places. So I guess you could boil it down to my interest in how places affect people and how people affect places. I've been a professional outdoor educator for most of my career. I actually met Patrick while facilitating a sea kayaking spring break trip for the Outdoor Rec Center, and then recruited Patrick to join our staff of adventure facilitators. As part of that training, we do leave no trace education, a lot of focus on stewardship. And then professionally, I've been involved with UREC Sustainability Committee and then WCU Sustainability and the Environment Committee. And lastly, just as I'm also a parent, so I think a lot about our children's future and how we can take steps now to influence a better tomorrow. Just real quick, some learning outcomes for today in our session. There's a small group of us here, so we can kind of go in different directions, but we're just hoping to give you a little overview of some of the science behind why it's important to take action for sustainability. Identify some personal actions that you could take to be more sustainable, and then perhaps some steps that your workplace might take, your department, to be more sustainable. So over to you, Patrick.
great. So my name is Patrick. So I am going into my senior year here at WSU studying civil engineering. I have done a lot of outdoor activities throughout my entire life growing up. I'm from Moscow. And this has exposed me to the outdoors and really given me a love for it. And that's how I met Jonathan, as he said. This has seen and showed me how our climate is changing and the effects that we can see from, less snow and, more wildfires. This year was especially bad year, but, it has changed as time has gone on. Also, another event that really helped shape me and why I care about sustainability was a sea turtle conservation trip that I went on during my senior year of high school. This trip was down in Mexico, and we worked to protect and help the mother sea turtles, female sea turtles, as they were laying their eggs, and then also help the baby sea turtles, because they nest on the beach, help them get from the beach back into the ocean. And that kind of showed me just the impact that conservation can have, because a lot of sea turtle species were in danger of extinction in the late 1900s. But through different conservation movements, a lot of these species have been able to increase their populations. And then here at WSU, in my civil engineering degree, I'm focusing on water availability and how climate change and wildfires impact that. So now I want to talk about an experience that I had last year. And so I was able to go to the United Nations Conference of the Parties. So this is the largest global climate conference. This is where the Paris Agreement was negotiated and other international frameworks. And so I went there. I am on the left, and then another WSU or former WSU student, Christian Gupsh. He has since graduated. Both of us were able to attend this conference, and it was just really interesting to see the representatives from every country essentially in the world come together to try to negotiate on these large international agreements, sitting in these packed deliberation rooms where there's maybe like 200 people, representatives from every country in the world essentially. There's lots of disagreement, and I wrote in one of my applications that the difference in opinion was palpable, but it was still they were there to try to work together to come together on to address these global issues such as climate change. But in addition to the negotiating, there's also a bunch of smaller events and lectures by professors, by people in industry, and just all working on this issue, which was really motivating to see. So now I want to like define sustainability. And so sustainability normally, as we think about it, has three different components. It has the social, the economic, and the environmental component, also known as people, profit, and planet. So these three things need to be balanced in order for sustainability to be achieved. In the United Nations World Commission on Environment and Development, they define sustainable development. So talking about development in this context as needs that meet the present without compromising the ability for future generations. This is a good definition, but it's a little vague. Like, what compromises the ability of future generations? I mean, if there's a little bit of pollution in a river or a lake, is that going to be around? Maybe it will have disappeared. But where is that threshold between what is enough and what is too much? Which is one of the reasons why it's a very fine line. It can be difficult to walk the line between taking too much or maybe not taking enough. So Earth Day was one of the defining moments in the history of moving towards sustainability. It started in 1970, and Senator Gaylord Nelson, who is from Wisconsin, was one of the original proponents, and along with Dennis Hayes, who has some WSU connections. So they were the ones who really worked to start the Earth Day, and when the first one happened in 1970, 10% of the US population participated, which is really astounding. Like, that's a sizable amount of millions of people. And since then, I don't think there's been as much participation or as many as people that have participated. After this happened, and there's just a general environmental movement and realization that more action was needed, this spurred Congress to pass the Clean Water, Clean Air, and the Endangered Species Acts. And so these acts really laid the foundation for what we consider sustainability and environmentalism in the United States. And during that time, they were looking at the climate and how it's been changing. And so I want to talk about that a little bit now, because this is what, or one of the reasons that sustainability is so important and why climate change is an issue that we need to address now. And so this figure on the left here shows the temperature in the blue line, and it shows how it varies from 1,000 years ago till present. So present is at 0, although this is a couple years old, and I have the new data on the right there. And then the red line is atmospheric concentration of CO2, carbon dioxide. So as you can see, they both have been holding relatively constant for roughly the past 800 to 900 years. But then recently they've started shooting up due to anthropogenic forces. Some people call this the hockey stick graph because it looks kind of like a hockey stick. So right now, yesterday I looked up what is the current concentration of CO2 in the Mauna Loa Observatory, which is in Hawaii, which is kind of like the gold standard, because it is far away from all pollution sources in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So right now it's 417 ppm. So if you look at this graph, the highest it goes, like I said, a few years ago, is 370. So we're already over 40 parts per million more since this graph was created. So just showing you that there's a continuation in the same trend of more carbon dioxide being emitted. And then the global temperature has responded in the same way, with it being off the chart up to the right as well. And former President Barack Obama said, "No challenge poses a greater threat to future generations than climate change." And I would agree with that. Now I'll turn it over to Jonathan.
Yeah, Patrick, I always appreciate hearing you explain those things. I don't have quite the science engineering background. I'm more of the education background. And so I always appreciate getting to, especially you as a student, getting to watch you explain that. And I can follow along and wow, that is some graph. And yeah, we need to take some action. So this is usually one of those slides where if we have a large group and we need to break things up and take a quick energizer, no pun intended, I ask folks to maybe take 30 seconds and, go find an appliance or two to go unplug. I'm not going to ask you to do that right now, but I'll ask you to think about that when this is over. See if you could find a couple things that you can unplug. We're going to spend some time now in our next slide actually looking at, and before I go there are some more tips there as well in your Avista website there of all different ways you could save energy. But we're going to spend some time, and there's that link right there, myavista.com, energy savings. We're going to spend some time now kind of looking at what you can actually do, because sometimes I attend some of these different talks and I love learning about the science. I love learning about all the issues, but then I'm left with like, all right, what can I do? And I don't know how many of you ever feel like that. Like, what are some things we can actually do? I'm a doer. So before I share some of these things, I'd like to hear in the chat, perhaps, if you could put in the chat, what are some things that you do? Maybe you carpool. Maybe you don't carpool right now with COVID. I don't know. Maybe you compost. What are some things that you do that you feel like are just some good practices? None of us have to be perfect, but put some of those things in the chat. And then we'll dive a little deeper into some of these other different steps. I really enjoy personally composting. It's one of my favorite things to do. That's sustainable is reducing the waste, our food waste, all those scraps that would otherwise be trucked over to a landfill, and instead get them turned over into something I can actually use in my garden. I'm seeing some, oh, there's Patrick. Yeah, eating mostly vegetarian. The vegan lifestyle. Alice, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I too have I have become a plant-based eater. This January, I looked up my notes. This January will be my 3rd year without eating any meat or poultry, just a little bit of seafood, and yeah, it's been a really cool journey. Recycling, though I've heard discouraging stuff about this lately. Yeah, recycling has certainly having some challenges globally, but better to do it than not. Awesome. And then also I see also Angela saying trying to buy less plastic or one-time use items. So reusing bags. That makes me think of, not buying disposable plastic bottles and using reusable bottles and coffee mugs and all of those good things. So thank you, Angela, for sharing that as well. Oh yeah, helping folks harvest things from the garden, canning, pickling. What a fun process too. Again, I'm a parent, and it's been fun. This time of year, my 8-year-old son has been really excited about getting apples from the apple tree outside and bringing them in so we can try to make applesauce because he really loves applesauce. And so yeah, that's a fun one. Cool. Well, thank you all for sharing those. I'm going to share in the chat a link that actually Patrick had shared with me that has a whole bunch of things that we can all do. And so if you are looking for some more resources, more steps you can take, you can follow that website, that link out. But we're going to talk just about a few of them, and they are those little icons on the page there. Repairing and reusing things, for example, repairing the belongings that you have versus buying them new, maybe looking at buying things used, reducing how many things we purchase in general, just carefully evaluating everything that we purchase. There was one in there about clothing that I thought was interesting. So maybe choosing clothing that is more durable, sustainably made, and hopefully will stay in style a little bit longer so you can wear them a little longer, if that's a thing for you. We talked a little bit already about, some of you had shared about eating more plants, eating lower on the food chain. And this doesn't have to be extreme. I like to remind people of that, just because I might choose to be whole food, plant-based and not really have any meat. Just reducing the amount of meat you eat per week or per day is a huge help. It's a huge help. Eating seasonally. So I kind of alluded to the apples right now. I know here at home we're eating a lot more potatoes, apples, pears, carrots this time of year, just things we're getting out of the garden. But that can also, reduce greenhouse gases, and we're not trucking as many things and shipping things around the world. Another thing that I thought was interesting in this list from this website was greening your money. And I'm going to throw in another link here in the chat in just a second. Because at WSU, we do have options in how we invest any of our retired expert in this. So I'm not going to say much about it, but I will post a link here from Tia, which is who many of us, I believe, have our retirement funds with. And you can actually invest your financial funds in funds that invest responsibly. So there's something that Tia has called a social choice fund, for example. So there's a link there that tells you more about that. But just because you are making financial investments, it doesn't have to be like either economic or for the environment or social. It could be all three at the same time. Pretty cool. Traveling less or differently. So maybe less flying. That's kind of easy right now. Maybe driving electric, maybe more human powered transportation in the mix, etc. Dialing it down. I'll put my video in here for a minute. It's cold downstairs where I am, so I have a nice puffy vest that, instead of cranking the heat, I've got the warm vest. And then just a few other personal favorites that I'll throw into the mix. I really enjoy like landscaping in our yard a lot, and gardening and things like that. And so we've chosen to do a lot of wisescaping with native plants. Cool thing about getting native plants is they're really low maintenance. They're easy. I don't really like to spend all of my time doing this stuff, but somehow I still kind of do. But anyway, native plants are low maintenance. They're drought tolerant. They can handle our wind a lot of the time, and they support pollinators. So that's a nice thing you can do. And then one other simple thing that I like to do is choosing cloth over paper. So thinking about things like napkins and, bags, handkerchiefs, towels, things like that. So thank you. Does anyone else? And of course, yeah, we throw in this little Cougs vote thing in here because it is the election season. Voting is a really important way to be involved in all of this as well. Anything else that anybody would like to share about some personal practices before we move along? All right, well, we will move along. Quick reminder about recycling. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this, frankly, because most of us aren't at WSU right now. However, it's really important to follow what WSU sets as the recycling policies. The biggest issue that I can relay is when bins get contaminated, they often have to dump the entire bin. So when you put the plastic and the paper or whatever it might be, if you mix things up, it becomes a problem. So making sure we're not having food waste, for example, in a recycling bin is a really big thing. All right, this is something I thought I'd spend a little bit of time on. I am fortunate to work for an awesome department. I love where I work. I've been there for 12 years, University Recreation. And I thought I would just honestly highlight some of the cool stuff that we do. I put our link down in the bottom of this slide. So if you're ever interested in seeing more about what our department does for sustainability, you can take a look at that. But this was also the Speak Up at Work was one of the icons on the last page. And just kind of thinking about how can we come together with colleagues to make a greater impact, right? And so one thing that we've done in our department is we have established sustainability as a core value. A lot of units have, their mission, vision, values, right? And so maybe sustainability can be one of your department's values. And this is useful down the road when you start to look at different initiatives that you might take on as a unit. And then you may need to be able to come back and well, why are you doing this? Similarly, having a sustainability statement. So for UREC and the Chinook, we prioritize sustainability practices based on social, environmental, and economic criteria to meet the current demands of the WSU community without compromising the needs and resources of future Cougars. So we have a statement, we have it published. that again enables us to take some more action. The next thing I would recommend is identifying your sphere of influence. So for example, for us in UREC, this is kind of like thinking about who do you reach, right? And what changes are within your capabilities. So for us, we see over 80% of WCU students in our facilities. We also see a lot of faculty and staff. We have abilities to affect educational messaging, purchases, and waste, just for some examples. As we evaluate initiatives that we can implement, it's important to think about those different things, right? So I'll give you a quick example of something that we did recently. There's a picture of me there being a little goofy, putting some plastic in a bin. That's something just recently, it's a small pilot program that we've been doing through the Trex recycling, plastic recycling program. I actually got the idea from the elementary school, Kamiak Elementary School Green Team. They were doing it for a year. And all it is having a few bins around campus, and people can drop off those plastic bags. We then take them, and honestly, we bring them over to Safeway. So it's not to say that it's other people can't do it and go drop it off there, but we just create a place for them to drop those off. It is a bit of a challenge in the sense of a challenge, like a fun challenge. If we collect a certain number of pounds of plastic, then we win a bench made of Trex materials, whatever. They basically take all these plastic bags, Trex, and then they turn it into decking material. So kind of a cool program, but kind of using this example as, okay, well, we have a few facilities. We have some places where we could just easily put some bins. We have staff where it's not a big deal for them to round them up, once every couple of weeks and drop it off. So it wasn't a really big deal for us, but yet in the last few months, we have collected over 200 pounds of plastic that's diverted from the landfill. So it's a small thing. Other things that we might do in our department might have been, looking at turning play fields into turf versus lawn, and maybe the sustainability benefit. We're looking at low flow faucets or showers in outdoor recreation. We made a decision long ago to provide Leave No Trace awareness certification for almost every single outdoor trip that goes out. So that means almost every one of our participants is learning how to conserve and protect the environment through which they are recreating. That's resulted in over 900 Leave No Trace certificates in about 5 years. So that's a lot of people learning a safe and responsible, lower impact way to recreate through our areas. I'd say lastly, just having the ability to assess the impact of what you're doing and then reporting out. So that URL down there is us, having one attempt at that. And that's a page that our sustainability committee will regularly update. So if you have any more questions about that, let me know. I think that's basically our whole presentation. So pretty quick, down and dirty. Does anyone else have anything, Patrick included, anything else to add or anything to share that might be useful? And you can see the next one of these is with my colleague Arturo, who actually works in my area. He's going to go through 5 steps on how to give feedback and then what to do with it. And that'll be on Thursday. Anything else anyone would like to share about sustainability? Well, thank you all for joining. I hope that you found some of this informative and that you can identify some steps and some personal practices. So thanks so much.
Yeah, well, thank you all, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any other questions or comments, please reach out to me or Jonathan.
Have a great day, everybody.